10 richest celebrities you won't believe still exist. What if I told you that some of the wealthiest people in entertainment aren't who you think they are? In fact, many of them have disappeared so completely from the public eye that most people assume they're either broke or dead. But here's the truth: while you've been watching today's Instagram influencers and TikTok stars, these forgotten legends have been quietly sitting on fortunes so massive, they make most A-listers look poor. One of them hasn't been photographed in over a decade, but is worth more than Taylor Swift. Another walked away from a billion-dollar empire to live in total secrecy. And number one? Well, you'll have to see it to believe it. This is the list Hollywood doesn't want you to know about. Let's dive in. We're living in the age of constant visibility. Celebrities today can't go a day without posting, trending, or making headlines. But what happens when fame becomes optional? When you've made so much money that you simply vanish? Today, we're counting down 10 of the richest celebrities who have practically disappeared from public life. Yet their bank accounts tell a very different story. These aren't has-beens or one-hit wonders. These are icons who chose silence over spectacle, and in doing so became even wealthier than you could imagine. Some of them left at the peak of their fame. Others were forced out by scandal or tragedy. But all of them share one thing: a fortune so vast they never need to work again. Let's start the countdown. 10th, Rick Moranis. Remember the dad from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? The nerdy accountant from Ghostbusters? Rick Moranis was one of the biggest comedy stars of the 80s and 90s. But in 1997, something happened that changed everything. His wife passed away from cancer, and Rick, at the height of his career, made a decision almost unheard of in Hollywood. He walked away. He turned down millions. He stopped making movies. He raised his 2 kids in private, far from the cameras, far from the tabloids. For over 2 decades, Rick Moranis basically ceased to exist in the public eye. But here's what most people don't know. Rick never went broke. Thanks to residuals from his iconic films, smart real estate investments, and a quiet return to voice acting, his net worth today sits comfortably around $10 million. Not billionaire status, but for someone who chose family over fame, that's a fortune built on principle. Rick Moranis didn't disappear because he had to. He disappeared because he wanted to. And that might make him richer than anyone on this list. But if you think that's impressive, wait until you hear about number 9. 9th, François-Henri Pinault, Salma Hayek's husband. You know Salma Hayek, actress, activist, stunning. But most people have no idea who she's married to. His name is François-Henri Pinault, and he's the CEO of Kering, the luxury conglomerate that owns Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent, Balenciaga, and more. While Salma walks red carpets, François controls a fashion empire worth over $20 billion. He rarely gives interviews. He avoids the spotlight. In fact, most people couldn't pick him out of a lineup. But his influence? Unmatched. Every time someone buys a Gucci bag or a pair of Saint Laurent boots, François gets a cut. Salma's net worth is estimated at $200 million. François, try $7 billion, personally. That makes him one of the wealthiest men in Europe, and yet he's practically invisible. Why? Because when you're that rich, you don't need to be famous. You just need to own the brands that make other people famous. And speaking of people who own everything, George Lucas. Yes, the creator of Star Wars. But hear me out, because most people don't realize just how completely George Lucas has vanished. In 2012, George sold Lucasfilm to Disney for $4.05 billion. He walked away from the franchise that defined him. No creative control, no say in the sequels. He was done. And since then? Silence. He's barely done interviews. He doesn't attend premieres. He lives on his Skywalker Ranch in Northern California, a sprawling 5,000-acre estate that most people will never see. He's building museums. He's funding education. But he's not chasing fame. Today, George Lucas is worth an estimated $5.5 billion, making him one of the richest filmmakers in history. But unlike other billionaires, he's not on Twitter. He's not launching rockets. He's just gone. Because when you've built galaxies, what's left to prove? But not everyone left by choice. Number 7 had no option but to disappear. 7th, Dave Chappelle, post-2005. In 2005, Dave Chappelle was the biggest name in comedy. Chappelle's show was a cultural phenomenon. Comedy Central offered him $50 million to continue, and then he left. He walked away from the deal, flew to South Africa. Disappeared, rumors exploded. Was he crazy, on drugs? Controlled by handlers? The truth was simpler and darker. Dave felt he was being exploited. He felt the system was turning his art into something he didn't recognize. So he chose freedom over fortune. For years, people thought he was done, broke, forgotten, but Dave came back, on his own terms. Through Netflix specials, sold-out tours, and strategic silence, he rebuilt his empire. Today, Dave Chappelle is worth an estimated $60 million. Not bad for someone who quit. He doesn't do interviews. He doesn't play the game. He shows up, says what he wants, and leaves. That's power. Still, his fortune is nothing compared to number 6, a woman who turned betrayal into billions. 6. Mackenzie Scott, Jeff Bezos' ex-wife. You probably know her as Jeff Bezos' ex-wife. But Mackenzie Scott is so much more. When she divorced Jeff in 2019, she walked away with $38 billion in Amazon stock. Overnight, she became one of the richest women on earth. And then she did something almost no billionaire does. She started giving it away. Since 2020, Mackenzie has donated over $14 billion to charities, universities, and organizations, often without press releases or photo ops. She doesn't do interviews. She doesn't have a public Instagram. She just gives. And yet, despite donating billions, her net worth today is still around $30 billion, thanks to Amazon stock growth. She's richer than Oprah, richer than Rihanna. And you'd never know it, because Mackenzie Scott doesn't need your attention. She has your respect. But what about someone who had everything and chose to walk away from it all? 5th, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Okay, technically they're still visible, but hear me out. In 2020, Harry and Meghan did the unthinkable. They quit the British royal family. They gave up titles, duties, and access to royal funding. The media called it Megxit. The world watched. But here's what happened next. They signed deals with Netflix and Spotify worth a combined $100 million. They launched Archewell. They bought a $14 million mansion in Montecito, California, and surrounded themselves with A-list neighbors like Oprah and Ellen. Today, their combined net worth is estimated at $60 million, and growing. They're not working royal jobs, they're building a brand. And while the tabloids obsess over every move, Harry and Meghan are quietly securing generational wealth. They didn't disappear, they reinvented. But if you think that's a bold move, wait until you hear about number 4. 4th, Paul McCartney. Everyone knows Paul McCartney. Beatlemania, Wings, Hey Jude. But here's the thing, when was the last time you saw Paul in a major movie? On a reality show? Feuding on Twitter? You didn't. Because Paul McCartney doesn't need to be seen. He owns the game. Thanks to songwriting royalties, touring revenue, and smart investments, Paul McCartney is worth an estimated $1.2 billion. That's billion with a B. He's one of the wealthiest musicians in the world, and one of the most low-key. He tours when he wants. He records when he feels inspired. He doesn't beg for streams or chase TikTok trends. He's a living legend who lets his catalog do the talking. Because when you wrote the soundtrack to the 20th century, you don't need to prove anything in the 21st. Still, even Paul's fortune pales compared to number 3, a woman who built an empire, then disappeared into it. 3rd, J.K. Rowling. Love her or hate her, J.K. Rowling is one of the most influential writers alive. Harry Potter is a global phenomenon worth $25 billion as a franchise. But here's the twist. Rowling has become so controversial, so polarizing, that she's practically vanished from public life. She rarely does interviews. She's been dropped from Harry Potter reunions. Even the stars of her own films distance themselves from her. And yet, she's still worth an estimated $1 billion. Because here's the secret. Controversy doesn't kill wealth. Obscurity does. And Rowling, despite the backlash, still controls the intellectual property. Every theme park ticket, every streaming view, every book sold. She gets paid. She doesn't need to be liked. She just needs to be read. But even $1 billion is pocket change compared to number 2, a recluse who controls an empire you use every single day. 2nd, Jan Koum, WhatsApp co-founder. You've probably never heard of Jan Koum, but you've definitely used his creation. Jan co-founded WhatsApp in 2009. In 2014, Facebook bought it for $19 billion. Jan walked away with roughly $10 billion personally, and then he disappeared. No social media, no interviews, no public appearances. He lives on a massive estate, collects Porsches, and essentially does nothing. He's not launching new startups. He's not buying sports teams. He's just rich, quiet, gone. Jan Koum is proof that you don't need to be famous to be powerful. You just need to build something the world can't live without, and then walk away. But there's one person who makes even Jan look small. Someone whose wealth is so staggering, so hidden, that most people don't even know they exist. First, the widow of L'Oreal. Françoise Bettencourt Myers. Her name is Françoise Bettencourt Myers, and she is the richest woman on earth. Françoise inherited the L'Oréal fortune, the cosmetics empire her grandfather founded. Today, she controls a stake worth over $90 billion. That makes her richer than Oprah, Rihanna, Taylor Swift, and Beyoncé combined. And yet, you've probably never seen her face. She doesn't do red carpets. She doesn't run for office. She doesn't even run L'Oréal day to day. She writes books on Greek mythology. She plays piano. She lives quietly in Paris. Françoise Bettencourt Myers is proof that the truly wealthy don't need to be seen. They don't need headlines. They don't need fame. They just need to own the world. So there you have it. 10 of the richest celebrities who barely exist in the public eye. Some walked away by choice. Others were pushed. But all of them prove the same thing. Real wealth doesn't need an audience. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these disappearances shocked you the most? And are there any other ultra-wealthy celebrities you think have completely vanished? Drop your answers in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the lives of the rich and hidden, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Because the real power? It's not in being seen,